Hello, my name is Jennifer Gonzalez, and I am doing, for my out of the box experience, I am doing chapter 2, which is ethnicity and race. I chose that topic because to me it is a very important factor, being a future educator. I do believe that it is important for our students and us as well as future educators to learn about different people, because how can we um, be better individuals ourselves and be better prepared to teach than to understand and know about different ideas from different races or different ethnicities. um I used to live up north, and I mean, you would see the diverse community, but so I do believe, especially here in Laredo, it's very important for us to have activities where children might know and be aware about other ethnicity and races. And plus, that way it's a great advantage, because if you don't teach them, then imagine when they do go out there or to another city or another state, and you might even have like culture shock or something. But these would be, again, I chose chapter 2, which is ethnicity and race. And my questions that I'm planning on interviewing, the teachers that I work with. One of my teachers that I work with, do have more than over 26 years of experience. And also another teacher that I work with does have over 17 years of experience as well. So I believe that does count very good, because that is, throughout that span of teaching, um, they might have encountered several issues about this already. So my questions to them would be like, what is your idea? What is your idea of ethnicity and race? The personal view, like what do they think? Also, does ethnicity and race play a role in your lesson curriculum? I'm curious to know if maybe throughout they ever plan around doing something, with the curriculum and teaching the kids about ethnicity and race. Also, I want to ask if they plan any activities, as I just mentioned right now, that teaches about ethnicity and race toleration. Especially with the whole bullying concept right now, that I think it'd be important to do teach about different ethnicity and races. That way, we can try and avoid the whole bullying subject. Also, if have you or do you currently teach any children of different ethnicity and or races? And what is their opinion on acculturation? I'm curious to find out, what they think about acculturation. And um, what is the dominant ethnicity in their classroom, like in the classroom that they teach. Also, I do want to ask as well if they've ever teach um, or anything, if they ever teach about the civil rights movement, because I know that does deal with ethnicity and race. I want to see how maybe the kids reacted when they taught them about, how back then everything was way different than here. And I want them also to know what's their view on a multi-ethnic curriculum. So I want to ask also what's their view on a multi-ethnic curriculum. I'm sorry. And I also want to see if they think that the role of assessments affects the closing the achievement gap. In other words, if the assessments are, they think it's like a little racially biased or not, like to the students that we teach here in Laredo. And finally, I want to ask what is their personal teaching philosophy in regards to a multi-ethnic classroom. I just curious to find out what they think about that. So basically, yes, that's why I chose this topic, and well, I'm looking forward to letting you know the rest. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye. Hello, and my name is Jennifer Gonzalez. This is the second part of, well, actually the final part of the Out of the Box experience that I am doing, and which is on chapter 2, ethnicity and race. I interviewed two teachers. Um, Both of them are from second grade. The first teacher I interviewed is Miss Calderon. She is currently a second grade teacher at HB Zachary, and she has 28 years of teaching experience. One of the questions that I asked was, first I asked what was her opinion of ethnicity and race, and she says that she thinks that we're all the same and that we can all achieve the same education if we have the willingness to learn and the proper tools for it. I also went ahead and asked um if she plans any lesson activities that teach about ethnicity and race toleration, and she said that she does. One of the major ones that she does do is especially during the Cinco de Mayo, which they do some brief activities. The children dress up too in traditional Mexican clothing, and also, for example, during Thanksgiving, some of the children they do talk about the pilgrims and talk about a brief history of the Native Americans and our traditions. That way, both for students that have recently immigrated here to the U.S., for example, the children that come from Mexico, um, can know that we honor and we also value both their culture and their ethnicity, and that we do teach it here. One of the other questions that I did ask was I was curious to ask if she has ever taught any child that is um of another ethnicity and race, being that Hispanic is the dominant, ethnicity and race here in Laredo. And she actually said she did. One of the students that she did teach was a little boy that came from the Philippines, and he came here and he entered in pre-K 4, and that was when she had recently started working because when he came in, he didn't have any knowledge whatsoever of the English language. So I asked also how she did to help him, get through that, that language barrier. And she said that they started him really, with the basic, which is the flashcards with the ABC, the sight words. Through they would also do through little like songs and activities, and to help him kind of get comfortable in that. And I also asked, how the relation was between that child and and the other kids. And she said that the child was very silent, at first. He was very kind of to himself, but afterwards, then he went ahead and and started to open up little by little. And another question that I also asked Miss Calderon is I asked her if she thinks that if the role of assessment affects, closing the achievement gap. And she answered that she thinks that it does because um, as when it comes down to how it is worded, especially, she said that she thinks it is even if it's in Spanish, for example, for the kids that only speak Spanish, so it's not a Spanish that they're typically aware of. It's more, for example, it's not like a Mexican Spanish that is typically heard or here along the border. This is more, the test is set more in the Caribbean Spanish. There's several words that don't, that do not have are used totally different in if you were to be speaking in Mexican Spanish rather than there's different types of depending which area you're from. There's different types of Spanishes. And so she thinks that yes, that it does, and that it affects teachers as well because it makes it more difficult as to them having to be, teaching for the test as well. And she also ended up saying that She thinks that living in a in a border area, it is very important for the students also to learn and for the teachers to teach about you know different ethnicities and races, so that in the future, if they do ever decide to go to another, you know, elsewhere, they won't come into contact with different ethnicities and races. They won't have that, culture shock to them. So that was her view. As as I was saying, due to the test being in different types of Spanish, it would affect the achievement gap as well for the students who just know English. Its words are typically words used that students don't really hear. And so her closing thought was that in order for us to, for the kids to have a better understanding of ethnicity and race, she thinks that it is important to have, like a multi-ethnic, curriculum, or to help or to teach a little bit about race toleration, because if the students later on go to a different city or somewhere outside of Laredo where there is more diversity, then they won't come to that culture shock. My last interview that I did was Miss Gutierrez, and she's a second grade teacher again in HB Zachary, and she has 25 years of working experience. One of the questions that I first asked her was if, ethnicity and race play a role in her lesson curriculum. And she answered yes, especially to students that, for Spanish speakers that need to modify the instructions and work according to their level. And I also asked her if she had ever taught a student outside I'm sorry, if she has ever taught a student of another ethnicity and race, and she said yes. She taught a little girl that, well, her mom was Hispanic and and her dad was Vietnamese. And so her dad opened up a business, which was a nail salon. And so the mother would work there with the dad, and they would both do nails. And so sometimes they would take, the little girl there to, while they were working, so they can wait, And one of the stories that Miss Gutierrez said that when the little girl came in, well, she didn't know any English. She knew Spanish because of the mother, but she didn't know any. She knew some words in Vietnamese, but she didn't know any English. So then they had to struggle, for her to learn the English language again, starting with flashcards and starting, basic sounds, letters, and she would say that every time that another staff member came or parents, that the little girl would tell Miss Gutierrez, "Oh, Miss Gutierrez, ya tiene un cliente." In other words, that there's a client there, and she would call all the people that came in, the adults, clients. And that was because and Miss Gutierrez, told the mom, what she was saying, because she thought it was funny. And the mother said that, that yeah, that she does that because due to their business, whenever someone's walking in, she would let the mother know, that there was somebody, at the door or waiting to get, service. So she would say that in Spanish, that there's a client waiting or there's a client coming in. So that was kind of a little bit funny, a little story she shared. But I asked her also if I asked her as well if what is the her opinion on acculturation, and she said that she thinks that we should respect every culture and their their practices, and not try to practice forcing, not try to force our culture on them, because they shouldn't be able to forget their own. And she thinks that they should continue, that we should involve more activities to teach about their cultures rather than just shunning their cultures out and making them lose their cultures. One of the things that I also asked Miss Gutierrez was that about the test as well. I asked her if her role, if she thinks that the role of assessment affects again closing the achievement gap, or for the child to progress with their scores, especially in the stars. And she said yes because her answer was very much similar to again Ms. Calderon's. She said that because it's a Spanish that's like outside of a Mexican Spanish, that it's not, it's unfamiliar to the kids. They don't really understand that to Spanish speaking kids. And also, she said that the English testing are words that are very not well known to kids, or to the kids. There are words that are very sometimes the words used are greater, or words that are a little bit higher above to what they know. And this was again the last interview I did, and this is the final part of my out of the box experience. And what I learned from here is that even though we're in a border city and that the dominant race here is Hispanic, that we should never we should always still incorporate different activities, try to of ethnic do different activities of you know ethnicity and race, and that as future educators we should always have sort of like a backup plan of you never know who you're gonna what student you're gonna get. You might be getting students from another country, or just students again that are here from the US but of a different race, and that it's better for our kids to learn to have that, to be already exposed to those different races rather than them again just going into a culture shock if someone else comes in and they don't really know too much about other people outside of their ethnicity and races. So I enjoyed this chapter, and again, because I truly feel that we as humans should always try to understand and learn about ourselves um, before we can form, opinions, or that way we can use, that knowledge of learning about ourselves so that we won't judge others mistakenly. So thank you very much for listening, and I really do hope that you enjoyed my out of the box experience.